Ambassador Sarah Chen stood motionless as the verdict echoed through the crystalline chamber of the Galactic Council. The words hit her like physical blows, each syllable carrying the weight of humanity's shattered dreams. The species known as Homo sapiens is hereby expelled from the Galactic Council, announced High Counselor Zefkar, his reptilian features carved from stone. Effective immediately, all Earth vessels are banned from Council space. All trade agreements are dissolved. All diplomatic relations are severed. Sarah's hands tremble behind her back, but her voice remains steady. May I ask what specific crimes humanity has committed to warrant this unprecedented punishment? The chamber filled with a chorus of clicks, hisses, and electronic warbles. The Council's version of derisive laughter. Counselor Velthera of the Hegemony stepped forward, her forearms spread in theatrical disgust. Crimes, she spat. Your species has spent 30 years contaminating our civilization with your dangerous philosophies. You speak of equality between species, as if a primitive biped could match the intellect of a Veltheran. You preach individual rights over collective harmony. You question authority itself. Sarah felt her composure crack. We've contributed more scientific advances in 3 decades than some species have in millennia. Our medical breakthroughs alone have saved billions of lives across. Silence. Zefkar's roar reverberated through the chamber. Your contributions are meaningless when weighed against the chaos you've sown. The slave revolts in the Outer Rim, the worker uprisings in the mining sector, the independence movements spreading like a plague through our territories, all traced back to your poisonous ideologies. The truth hit Sarah like a revelation. This wasn't about humanity's failures. It was about their success. For 30 years, human diplomats, scientists, and traders had spread throughout Council space, carrying with them the radical idea that every sentient being possessed inherent worth. They'd taught enslaved Kethmari that freedom was possible. They'd shown indentured Zephyrians that they deserved fair wages. They'd whispered to countless species that the rigid caste systems keeping them in chains were not natural law, but artificial constructs that could be torn down. You fear us, Sarah said quietly, the realization dawning. Not because we're weak, but because we're strong. Not because our ideas are wrong, but because they're right. The chamber fell silent. For a moment, even the background hum of the station's life support seemed to pause. Counselor Drexon of the trade union slithered forward, his gas-filled breathing apparatus hissing with each word. Your species mistakes chaos for progress. The galaxy has known peace for 8 centuries under Council guidance. Order, stability, each species in their proper place, fulfilling their designated role in the greater harmony. Whose harmony? Sarah shot back, her diplomatic training finally cracking under the weight of injustice. The harmony of the Veltheran nobles who own entire star systems while their own people starve in the lower cities? The harmony of the Zektheri Empire that has reduced 47 species to nothing more than biological machinery? You call it peace, but I call it the silence of the oppressed. The chamber erupted. Counselors rose from their seats, mandibles clicking, tentacles writhing, energy fields fluctuating with rage. But beneath the fury, Sarah heard something else, fear. Raw, primal fear. High Counselor Zefkar raised his staff, a crystalline construct that hummed with barely contained energy. You have condemned your own species with your words, Ambassador Chen. The Council's decision is final. Humanity is banished. Any human vessel found in Council space will be destroyed without warning. Any world that harbors your kind will face immediate sanctions. As the words sank in, Sarah felt an unexpected calm settle over her. They were afraid. These ancient, powerful species who had ruled the galaxy for centuries were genuinely terrified of a young race that had barely left its home system. The irony was beautiful. Then we accept your judgment, she said, straightening to her full height. Humanity will leave Council space. But remember this moment, counselors. Remember it when your slaves break their chains. Remember it when your oppressed masses rise up. Remember it when the galaxy discovers that there's another way to live, a way built on freedom, dignity, and the radical idea that power should serve the people, not the other way around. She turned to leave, but Zefkar's voice stopped her. Empty threats from a banished primitive. Your species will struggle to survive in the Outer Rim. Without Council technology, without our trade networks, without our protection, you'll be extinct within a century." Sarah smiled, a cold expression that sent ripples of unease through the watching aliens. "Counselor, you've just made the same mistake every tyrant in history has made. You've underestimated humanity's greatest strength. We don't just survive, we thrive." As the chamber doors sealed behind her, Sarah activated her communication device. "This is Ambassador Chen to Earth Command. Operation Exodus is now in effect. Send word to every human ship, every colony, every settlement. We're going home to prepare for the greatest challenge our species has ever faced." The response came immediately, crackling with determination. "Understood, Ambassador. Earth stands ready. Humanity will not bow." Walking through the station's corridors for the last time, Sarah began planning. The Council had given them an ultimatum, expecting submission or extinction. Instead, they would get something far more dangerous, a human empire built not on conquest, but on the revolutionary idea that freedom was worth fighting for. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you backed humanity into a corner. 3 months after the banishment, Fleet Admiral Marcus Kane stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, Earth's newest deep space construction facility. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, he watched humanity's response to exile take shape. And it was magnificent. Thousands of vessels moved through the void like a choreographed ballet. Mining ships from the asteroid belts delivered refined metals to massive fabrication platforms. Transport vessels carried components between construction sites. And everywhere, the skeletal frameworks of new warships grew like technological flowers blooming in the darkness. "Status report," Kane commanded, his weathered face reflecting the blue glow of welding torches in the distance. Commander Lisa Park approached with a data pad, her expression mixing exhaustion with exhilaration. "Sir, construction proceeds ahead of schedule. We have 47 destroyers in final assembly, 18 cruisers at 70% completion, and the first dreadnought entering secondary systems integration." Kane nodded, impressed despite himself. In just 90 days, humanity had transformed from a scattered collection of colonies into a unified war machine. But this wasn't about conquest. It was about survival. "And our new allies?" he asked. Park's smile was grim. "That's where things get interesting. The Keth Mari delegation just arrived from the Outer Rim. They're requesting formal alliance talks." Through the viewport, Kane spotted the approaching vessel, a sleek ship of unfamiliar design, its hull scarred by energy weapons and patched with mismatched materials. It was beautiful in its defiance, a symbol of resistance against overwhelming odds. The Keth Mari had been the Council's most prized servants for over 3 centuries. Their natural telepathic abilities made them perfect administrators, translators, and spies. But 50 years of human contact had planted dangerous seeds. When the first Keth Mari uprising began 6 months ago, Council forces crushed it ruthlessly. The survivors fled to the lawless regions beyond Council control, where they'd been fighting a guerrilla war ever since. An hour later, Kane found himself face-to-face with Keth Mari resistance leader Veltar. The alien stood barely 4 feet tall, his gray skin marked with the ritual scars of his people. But his golden eyes burned with intelligence and unbreakable resolve. "Admiral Kane," Veltar said, his mental voice resonating directly in Kane's mind. "My people have heard of humanity's exile. We come to offer alliance against our common enemy." Kane leaned forward. "What do you bring to the table? No offense, but our intelligence suggests your forces number in the thousands, not millions." Veltar's mental laughter was like silver bells. "Numbers are not our strength, Admiral. Knowledge is. For 300 years, my people served as the Council's eyes and ears. We know their military capabilities, their political weaknesses, their hidden fears. More importantly, we know which species are ready to break free." The alien projected a 3-dimensional star map into the space between them, highlighting dozens of systems throughout Council space. Red markers indicated active resistance movements. Yellow showed growing unrest, and green marked potential rebellion targets. The Zephyrians in the mining colonies are organizing work stoppages. The Talani have begun sabotaging Council supply lines. The aquatic Marathani are refusing to process food shipments. Your species didn't just spread ideas, Admiral. You lit a fuse that's still burning. Kane studied the map, his tactical mind racing. You're talking about coordinated rebellion across hundreds of worlds. The Council will respond with overwhelming force. Yes, Veltar agreed, which is why scattered resistance movements need something they've never had. A unified command structure, advanced technology, and a safe haven to retreat to when the fighting gets brutal. The implications hit Kane like a physical blow. Humanity wasn't just building a fleet for their own defense. They were preparing to become the military backbone of a galaxy-wide revolution. There's something else, Park interjected, consulting her data pad. We received similar contact attempts from 17 other species. The Broken Chain Coalition wants to establish formal diplomatic relations. The Free Colonies Union is requesting military advisors. Even the nomad fleets are asking about joint operations. Kane turned back to the viewport, watching construction continue at a frantic pace. Human engineering crews worked alongside Kethmari technicians, while Zephyrian metallurgists shared their knowledge with Earth scientists. This wasn't just building an army. It was forging a new civilization from the galaxy's discarded peoples. What does the Council think we're doing out here? Kane asked. Veltar's mental voice carried dark amusement. Dying Admiral. They believe your species will fragment within a generation, torn apart by resource conflicts and isolation. They see the Outer Rim as a graveyard where inconvenient ideologies go to wither away. Then they're in for a surprise, Kane murmured, making his decision. Commander Park, transmit our acceptance of all Alliance proposals, and begin Phase 2 of the construction program. Phase 2, sir? Kane smiled, a predatory expression that made even the telepathic Kethmari step back. We're not just building a fleet anymore. We're building an empire, and not the kind that conquers, the kind that liberates. As if summoned by his words, alerts began chiming throughout the station. On the tactical display, dozens of new contacts appeared at the edge of sensor range. Ships of every configuration imaginable, bearing the flags of forgotten colonies, escaped slave populations, and species that had never been allowed Council membership. Sir, the communications officer reported, voice tight with emotion. We're receiving broadcast messages from the incoming fleet. They're all saying the same thing. Earth calls, and we answer. Kane closed his eyes, feeling the weight of history settling on his shoulders. They'd been banished as dangerous idealists, cast out like criminals. Instead, they become something far more threatening to the old order. They'd become hope. The revolution was about to begin. President Elena Vasquez stood in the war room deep beneath Geneva, surrounded by holographic displays that painted a picture of galactic transformation. 6 months had passed since humanity's banishment, and the galaxy was burning with the fire of revolution. Status report on Operation Liberation, she commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had never expected to lead humanity into its first interstellar war. General Harrison stepped forward, his face grim with the weight of command. Madam President, our combined forces have successfully liberated 43 star systems. The Kethmari resistance has disrupted Council communications across 17 sectors. Zephyrian mining colonies in the Outer Rim have declared independence. The ripple effects are spreading faster than we anticipated. Elena studied the tactical display, watching as Red Council territories slowly bled into the blue of the Liberation Alliance. Each change color represented millions of beings tasting freedom for the first time in centuries, but also meant escalating conflict with powers that had ruled the galaxy for 800 years. Casualties? She asked quietly. Lower than projected, General Harrison replied. The Council's forces are stretched thin. They never expected coordinated resistance on this scale. But, Madam President, we need to discuss the Phoenix Initiative. Elena's stomach tightened. The Phoenix Initiative, humanity's most controversial and dangerous military development. In the depths of Earth's research facilities, human scientists worked alongside alien refugees to create weapons that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Weapons designed not just to destroy Council fleets, but to shatter the very foundations of their power. Sir, interrupted Lieutenant Commander Torres from the communications station, we're receiving an encrypted transmission from Ambassador Chen. She's requesting immediate conference with you and the Alliance Council. Elena nodded. Put her through. Sarah Chen's hologram materialized in the center of the room, but she was barely recognizable. Gone was the polished diplomat who had faced the Council's judgment. In her place stood a battle-hardened commander, her uniform bearing the insignia of the Liberation Fleet. Plasma burn scarred her left cheek, and her eyes held the cold fire of someone who had seen too much death. "Madam President," Sarah began without preamble, "we have a problem. Council intelligence has discovered the location of Sanctuary." The blood drained from Elena's face. Sanctuary, humanity's greatest secret and most valuable asset. Hidden in the dead system of Kepler 442, it housed 3 million refugees from across the galaxy. Scientists, artists, philosophers, and freedom fighters from dozens of species who had fled Council persecution. It was also the birthplace of the Liberation Alliance's most advanced technology and strategic planning center. "How long do we have?" Elena asked. 72 hours before a Council extermination fleet arrives," Sarah replied. 3 dreadnoughts, 15 battle cruisers, and a full complement of support vessels. They're not coming to capture. Elena, they're coming to make an example. General Harrison leaned forward. "What about evacuation?" Sarah's laugh was bitter. "There's nowhere to run. The Council has blockaded every hyperspace route out of the system. They want Sanctuary destroyed and everyone in it dead. Complete extinction of the Resistance leadership." Elena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 3 million lives pressing down on her. Those refugees had believed in humanity's promised protection. They'd traded their old lives for the hope of freedom, and now they face annihilation because of humanity's rebellion. "Options?" she asked. "We fight," came a new voice. Veltar materialized beside Sarah's hologram, the Kethmari leader's golden eyes blazing with determination. "The Liberation Fleet can reach Sanctuary in 60 hours. We make our stand there." "Against impossible odds," General Harrison protested. "Our combined forces couldn't match a single Council dreadnought in direct combat, let alone 3. Elena opened her eyes, and everyone in the room stepped back involuntarily. The President's gaze had become something inhuman, cold, calculating, and utterly ruthless. "General Harrison," she said quietly, "activate the Phoenix Initiative. All of it." "Madam President," Harrison stammered, "the weapons haven't been fully tested. The psychological warfare programs could cause permanent damage to entire populations. The viral AIs could crash every computer system in Council space. And the extinction protocols?" Elena asked, her voice never rising above a whisper. Harrison swallowed hard. Those could kill billions, ma'am, indiscriminately." Elena stood, walking to the tactical display. She placed her hand on the red expanse representing Council space, home to trillions of beings who had never chosen their government, never voted for oppression, never asked to be part of a system that ground freedom under its heel. "The Council made a choice 6 months ago," she said finally. "They chose to judge humanity by our compassion and mistake it for weakness. They chose to banish us rather than listen to our ideas. Now they choose genocide over coexistence." She turned to face the room. "But they forgot something crucial about human nature. We don't just fight to win. We fight to ensure that those who would destroy freedom never get the chance to do it again." Sarah's hologram flickered with interference from across the galaxy. "Elena, what are you planning?" Elena smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression anyone in the room had ever seen. "The Council wanted to make an example of Sanctuary. Instead, we're going to make an example of them. General, transmit activation codes to all Phoenix assets. In 72 hours, the galaxy will discover that humanity doesn't build empires through conquest." "Then how do we build them?" Veltar asked, his telepathic voice carrying genuine curiosity. Elena's smile widened. "Through terror, old friend. Pure, absolute terror. When we're done, every tyrant in the galaxy will lie awake at night, wondering if the shadows hold human operatives. Every oppressor will jump at unexpected sounds, knowing that humanity remembers every injustice. Every slave master will count their breaths, understanding that freedom has teeth." The room fell silent as the implication sank in. Humanity was about to cross a line from which there could be no return. They were about to transform from liberators into something far more dangerous. They were about to become the nightmare that kept tyranny awake at night. "God help us all," General Harrison whispered. "God already has," Elena replied. "He gave us the will to fight and the intelligence to win." The Battle of Sanctuary would be remembered as the moment humanity stopped pretending to be civilized. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Defiance, humanity's first and only capital ship, as the Council extermination fleet emerged from hyperspace. Through the view screen, enemy vessels materialized like metal predators. 3 massive dreadnoughts flanked by cruiser escorts, their hulls gleaming with the confidence of 8 centuries of unopposed dominance. "Enemy fleet composition confirmed," reported Commander Park, her voice steady despite the overwhelming odds. "Council forces outnumber us 15 to 1. Their combined firepower exceeds our defensive capabilities by a factor of 7. Kane nodded grimly. Around Defiance, the Liberation fleet hung in space like scattered stars, human destroyers, Kethmari stealth ships, Zephyrian mining vessels converted to missile platforms, and dozens of other craft crewed by species that had never been allowed to dream of victory against Council might. "Sir," called Lieutenant Torres from communications, "we're receiving a transmission from the lead dreadnought." "Put it through." The view screen filled with the reptilian features of Grand Admiral Zethmach, the Council's most decorated military commander. His scales bore the ritual scarifications of a dozen conquered species, each mark representing a civilization crushed beneath Council authority. "Admiral Kane," Zethmach hissed, his voice dripping with contempt, "I offer you one final opportunity for reason. Surrender the criminal refugees hiding in this system, and your deaths will be swift. Refuse, and I will ensure your species becomes a cautionary tale told to frighten young civilizations into compliance." Kane stepped forward, his image transmitted across space to the enemy bridge. "Grand Admiral, I appreciate the offer, but humanity has a counterproposal." Zethmach's eyes narrowed. "You dare negotiate from a position of weakness?" Kane smiled, the same cold expression that had unsettled alien diplomats for months. "Who said we're weak?" At his signal, space erupted into chaos. The Liberation Fleet's opening salvo wasn't conventional weapons fire. It was something far worse. Viral programs crashed through Council communication networks, turning their own systems against them. Psychological warfare broadcasts began transmitting directly into alien minds, carrying messages of doubt, fear, and rebellion. But most terrifying of all were the Phoenix weapons themselves. The first Council cruiser simply stopped, its weapons powered down, its engines went silent, and its crew abandoned their posts as the ship's AI began broadcasting footage of every atrocity the Council had committed over the past 8 centuries. The crew, overwhelmed by guilt and horror, began sabotaging their own vessel. The second cruiser tried to retreat, but found its hyperspace drive infected with a virus that rerouted it into the nearest star. The crew had 17 minutes to contemplate their fate before the ship plunged into solar fire. But it was the third cruiser's fate that truly announced humanity's transformation. Phoenix nanites, invisible and unstoppable, infiltrated the ship's life support systems. The crew didn't die. That would have been merciful. Instead, they experienced every moment of suffering they had ever inflicted on others. Slavers felt the agony of their victims. Torturers endured their own techniques. Genocidal commanders lived through the death of every civilization they had destroyed. "What are you?" Zethmach whispered, his voice breaking as reports flooded his bridge. Kane's smile never wavered. "We're what you created, Grand Admiral. You wanted us gone because our ideas were dangerous. Now you get to learn just how dangerous we really are." Across Council space, Phoenix protocols activated simultaneously. On 1,000 worlds, sleeper agents who had posed as traitors, diplomats, and scientists for decades revealed their true nature. AI viruses crashed financial networks, erasing the wealth of Council elites. Psychological warfare programs hijack entertainment broadcasts, filling them with images of freedom and rebellion. And in the darkest corners of the galaxy, extraction teams began liberating Council officials' families, not to harm them, but to show them the truth about the regime they served. But the coup de grace was yet to come. Deep in the Council's capital system, a single human operative named David Chun, Sarah's younger brother, stood in the central data core of the Galactic Archive. For 6 months, he had worked as a maintenance technician, invisible and ignored. Now, he activated the final Phoenix Protocol. Every secret the Council had hidden for 8 centuries spilled across public networks. Evidence of genocide, slavery, genetic experimentation, and the systematic oppression of dozens of species. The carefully maintained lie of peaceful governance shattered in an instant, replaced by undeniable proof of tyranny. On his bridge, Zethmok watched his empire crumble in real time. Rebellions erupted on hundreds of worlds. Council fleets found themselves fighting their own crews. The rigid hierarchy that had maintained order for centuries collapsed as species after species declared independence. "This is impossible," he snarled. No primitive species could orchestrate such complexity. Kane's image leaned forward, and his eyes held the cold fire of humanity unleashed. "Grand Admiral, you made one critical error in your calculations. You assumed we were the same species you banished 6 months ago. But humanity doesn't just adapt. We evolve. And you taught us that in this galaxy, mercy is weakness and compassion is naivety." Around Sanctuary, the Council fleet began disintegrating as their own crews turned against them. The Phoenix weapons hadn't just attacked their ships. They had attacked the very concept of blind obedience that held the Council together. "So what happens now?" Zethmok asked, his voice hollow with defeat. Kane's smile became something beautiful and terrible. "Now, Grand Admiral, you learn what freedom looks like. Your crews are free to choose their own destinies. Your species are free to govern themselves. And your victims are free to seek justice." He paused, letting the words sink in. "As for you personally, you're free to spend the rest of your life knowing that you helped create the very empire that destroyed everything you stood for." The transmission cut, leaving Zethmok alone with the ashes of Council supremacy. Around him, his bridge crew slowly removed their rank insignia and walked away from their posts. The age of galactic tyranny was ending, not with conquest, but with the simple realization that no one had to obey anymore. In the depths of space, humanity's empire was being born, not through domination, but through the revolutionary act of setting everyone free. 1 year after the Battle of Sanctuary, President Elena Vasquez stood in the Grand Assembly of the Terran Federation, addressing representatives from 300 liberated worlds. The chamber itself was a marvel of cooperative architecture. Human engineering merged with Kethmari's psychic resonance fields, Zephyrian metallurgy, and artistic sensibilities from dozens of other species. But it wasn't a building that made Elena proud. It was the faces looking back at her. Beings who had spent their entire lives under Council oppression, now serving as elected leaders of their own free worlds. "Members of the Assembly," Elena began, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. 1 year ago, the Galactic Council cast humanity into exile, expecting us to wither away in the darkness between stars. Instead, we kindled a fire that has burned away 8 centuries of tyranny. The Assembly erupted in applause. Not the polite recognition of diplomatic courtesy, but the raw celebration of beings who had never expected to live free. Elena waited for quiet before continuing. "Today, I stand before you not as the leader of humanity's empire, but as the first president of our Galactic Federation. Because what we've built isn't an empire at all. It's something far more dangerous to tyrants everywhere. It's proof that free beings, working together, can achieve the impossible." Admiral Kane stepped forward from a human delegation, his weathered face bearing new scars from a dozen liberation campaigns. "Madam President, the military report." Elena nodded, though she already knew the statistics by heart. The final Council holdouts have surrendered or been absorbed into local governments. Former Council species are establishing their own democratic institutions. Military resistance has ended, replaced by the far more challenging work of teaching freedom to beings who have never known it. From the Kethmari section, Veltar's mental voice resonated through the chamber. The Phoenix Initiative has been permanently deactivated. All viral weapons, psychological warfare programs, and extinction protocols have been destroyed. Humanity has kept its promise. These tools were created for liberation, not domination. Elena felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The Phoenix weapons had been necessary, but they represented everything humanity hoped never to become again. They had been the sword that cut away tyranny. But swords had no place in the garden of civilization they were trying to grow. And what of the former council leadership? Asked Representative Morthek of the liberated aquatic worlds. Sarah Chen, now serving as Secretary of Interstellar Justice, rose from her seat. The scars on her face had faded, but her eyes still held the steel of someone who had stared into the abyss and chosen to light a candle instead of cursing the darkness. Truth and Reconciliation Commissions are operating on 47 worlds, Sarah reported. Former oppressors who confess their crimes and demonstrate genuine remorse are being offered paths to redemption through community service. Those who refuse accountability face trial by their own victims. No executions? Press Representative Kexlar of the mining guilds. Elena shook her head. We learned something during our exile. Death creates martyrs, but justice creates citizens. Every former tyrant who chooses redemption becomes living proof that people can change. Every oppressor who faces their victims and seeks forgiveness helps heal wounds that have festered for centuries. The chamber buzzed with conversation in dozens of languages and communication methods. Elena watched with satisfaction as former enemies debated policy, as species who had been kept separate by council design learned to work together, as the impossible dream of galactic democracy took its first tentative steps. There is one final matter, Elena announced, and the chamber fell silent. The question of leadership. Many of you have proposed that humanity should guide this federation. Given our role in its creation, I respectfully decline. The statement sent shockwaves through the assembly. Elena had expected this reaction. The Federation belongs to all of us equally, she continued. Humanity will serve as one voice among many, with no more authority than the smallest mining colony or agricultural world. We've learned that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The moment any species claims dominion over others is the moment we begin walking down the same path as the Council. Representative Zilhara of the former slave world stood, her translucent features shimmering with emotion. But what guarantee do we have that the Federation won't become another council? That democracy won't decay into tyranny? Elena smiled. Not the cold expression that had terrified council admirals, but the warm smile of someone who had found hope in the darkest places. Because we're not building a government, Representative Zilhara. We're building a revolution that never ends. Every generation will have to choose freedom anew. Every world will have to defend democracy against entropy. And every species will have to remember that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. From the human section, an elderly man stood slowly. Elena recognized him as Dr. James Morrison, the philosopher whose writings on human dignity had helped spark the Galactic Rebellion. Madam President, Morrison said, his voice carrying the weight of history, what do we tell our children about what we've accomplished here? What do we tell them about the price of freedom? Elena looked around the chamber, seeing hope and determination in hundreds of alien faces. These beings had risked everything for the chance to govern themselves. They had fought impossible odds and won, not through superior firepower, but through the simple belief that freedom was worth any sacrifice. We tell them the truth, Dr. Morrison. We tell them that freedom isn't a destination. It's a journey. We tell them that democracy isn't a system of government. It's an act of faith that ordinary beings can make extraordinary choices. And we tell them that the greatest empire humanity ever built wasn't made of ships and weapons and conquered territory. Elena paused, letting her words echo through the chamber. We tell them that the greatest empire humanity ever built was the idea that no one has to bow to anyone else, that every sentient being deserves dignity, justice, and the right to determine their own fate, that empire doesn't have borders, can't be conquered, and will outlive every star in the galaxy. As the assembly erupted in thunderous applause, Elena felt a quiet satisfaction settle over her. They had been banished as dangerous idealists. They had become something far more threatening, living proof that those dangerous ideas actually worked. Somewhere in the galaxy, on worlds they might never visit, beings were learning to read, to to vote, to dream of futures their parents could never imagine. Children were growing up free, not knowing that freedom had ever been anything other than their birthright. That was humanity's true empire, not territory conquered, but minds liberated, not subjects ruled, but citizens empowered, not a legacy written in stone, but a revolution written in the hearts of every being who refused to kneel. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly as it should be.